Thank you, Joyce.
Invisible judgment.
Okay, so in a minute, we'll be starting, in a couple minutes, we'll be starting our adult formation
That's right.
on September 22nd at St. Mark's. So that's something I'll be, if you're willing to sub for me sometime,
Yeah.
that's something that I like to do too, so that on the Zoom, it's kind of identified as the date and so forth. I'm sitting here.
Oh, she said where we are and what the day is.
Oh.
Oh,
I missed that.
In case this isn't
I'm
where you meant to
glad
be.
I asked, because you get clueless. While we're waiting to get started, I would like to just tell you about a couple things that are coming up that you might be interested in. You may have heard about this group, Sacred Ground, and you may not know what it is, because probably the first thing that this group did that was visible at St. Mark's is they did a land acknowledgement statement. And because it's called Sacred Ground, when I was talking to my friend who comes here all the time about it, she thought it was just about Native Americans because we did the land acknowledgement and it has that sacred ground sounds kind of Native American.
Yeah.
It's really looking at race in general and our faith and how they intersect. And so we look at all different aspects of race. So we've explored Native American history, Black history in America, Latino and other groups. So if you're interested, our first meeting for this year is this coming Tuesday. And we'll really be talking, probably be mostly planning for our first big event, which is the screening of Origin. And I don't know if you're familiar with this movie. If you've seen it, I'll pass these around, and if you want one, take it. If you don't, pass it by. But if you've heard of the book Cast by Isabel Wilkerson, this is a movie that's really about her life and about her discovery of her kind of aha moment. That's like, it isn't really about racism, it's about caste. And it's really a good movie. I really enjoyed it. And so we had the opportunity to be a sponsor. The Northern Illinois Conference of United Methodists made an arrangement to have it shown at as many sites as they could find between October 2nd and October 8th. So we are a site. It will be in Mann Hall. We'll have we haven't figured out the particulars because we're meeting Tuesday, but I think we'll probably have some little snacky things for people to munch on, because if you go to a movie, you want to. And then we'll have a discussion about it afterwards. It's really a thought-provoking movie. Have any of you seen it?
No.
Yeah, me too. I've seen it. It's good. So just letting you know about that.
And I'd like to say something more.
Sure.
Because Sacred Ground is a training that the Episcopal Church nationwide offered to parishes throughout the United States on helping their members learn about racism.
Right.
And it was really thorough.
Mm-hmm.
We were really well educated, and we have met, and the Diocese of Chicago is hoping to bring an anti-racism training to all of the parishes now, a little differently, not through that, but that's still available for people.
Right.
And we found that we were so well trained that we really are really ready to present it however we can to our parish.
Yeah. So, and what was interesting is St. Mark's did that during COVID.
Yeah.
So those meetings, we had two different groups and they were on Zoom.
Time.
Yeah, but the curriculum was very packed. But so anyway, so if you're interested, in knowing more about all of the events during the year, there are some of these brochures. And then if you're interested in knowing more about adult education, there are those brochures. I think everybody here, so there are a couple people who haven't been here so far this fall. So Debbie, want to just introduce yourself quickly?
Hi, I'm Debbie. I was named after Debbie Reynolds.
Hooray. And I can tell you that Debbie's a teacher because I heard her out in the hallway talking about a student paper on her phone.
I teach public speaking at Wheaton on a part-time basis, but I teach freshman comp at COD. So I'm an adjunct instructor, kind of semi-retired, but
Do you have Zoom up and running?
Yes, we do.
Okay, great.
And Bill, you haven't been
No.
here this year,
Bill Francis, I'm from Lombard,
okay?
2 years here.
2 years at St. Mark's, yeah, okay. And
Oh,
Beth,
I
you
was
have-
here last year.
You were
I mean,
last
last week.
You were here last week?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't remember. Oh, yes, now I do remember. You said where Josh was.
Oh.
You move.
Wow.
Yeah.
She different.
Well, she was here this year. I think I must have been in a daze last week. Okay. All right. Well, without further ado, I'll introduce our speakers, Jamie and David, and you can take it away.
Thank you. I'll start off. So Jamie and I were communicating about this and trying to figure out how do we talk about listening, the art of listening, and not make it a college lecture of, all the boring stuff that we've learned. So we decided that we'd start off with some questions. I put them on the board, but I'm going to have you write for yourself. And just to talk about the sequence here, you're gonna write in response to these questions. Then you're gonna discuss with neighbors, and then we're gonna bring that to the whole group. So that's kind of the sequence here for the first half. Then the latter half, we're going to do some exercises, some listening exercises. So that's the plan. So let me pull this a little closer so that you can see these questions, I hope. And maybe the Zoomers can see it all well. I'm sure about that. It's kind of hard to see. But the first question, think of a time you felt you were skillfully listened to. Think of a time you were skillfully listened to. Somebody did a good job of listening. List out what they were doing. How did you know that they were doing a good job of listening? No,
You learned
cards are coming around and some writing utensils. I don't know if these writing utensils work, but give them a try. And if they don't, then get another one.
There's
So,
a lot of.
yeah, we just grabbed them. I grabbed a handful from various places in our house. So that's the first question. Think of a time you felt skillfully listened to and list out what you think they were doing. Second one, can you think of a time you felt you were not listened to? So you were communicating something, you wanted to say something, you wanted to get it across, but it didn't connect. What do you think was going on there? Third question. When you're listening well to somebody else, how do you set yourself up for that? Is there some mental exercise you do to yourself, something you say to yourself? Some way you get in the right frame of mind for listening well? Fourth question, and this is the one that I hope we can really get to. What do you see in yourself that gets in the way of good listening? This is very personal now. Now we're not talking abstract, we're talking about something inside of myself. I'll leave these here so you can reference them, but we'll give you 5 or 7 minutes to kind of work on these questions for yourself because they require a little bit of thought and a little bit of analysis and maybe not categories we think about a whole lot. So I'll just pause. Can everybody see them well enough to Use my handwriting. You can't see it? Well, maybe I can pull it over this way. What this thing is. Dragging along. Oh, it's a computer. Better not drag that too far. Does that look better?
Read them.
Yeah.
So we're having people write on these 4 questions, and then we're gonna share with our neighbors. And then share in the whole group. So the first question is about when you felt skillfully listened to. How did that happen? Second one is times you felt you were not listened to. And what was going on? Third one, when you listen well, how do you set yourself up for that? And then the last one, what do you see in yourself that gets in the way of good listening? So that's a more personal kind of share. I'll give you another minute, and then we're going to share with each other, with your neighbor. Okay, let's start sharing with each other. Just pick somebody. A neighbor, preferably. So you don't have to wander so far.
You want to each other?
So after
I'll just switch. And that would be, you know.
Yeah, I think that one went, I
Um,
don't know if it's supposed to be exactly the
Well,
same.
you'll
but
see why.
So I'll give you about 3 to 5 minutes. to start.
But this is the beginning of this. So.
For our friends online, if you go ahead and mute our mic for a few minutes, you guys can use the audio channel to talk to yourselves. You won't be overridden by us.
So what they're doing, we've got 4 questions. What,
you know, hate to use an analogy, but you build a house and your foundation has to be strong, right? That's why you're hoping Darnell Wright and Braxton Jones can develop into 2 really, really good tackles, right? I know people were on Darnell Wright last week and he, you know, he's got to get his shoulder back to pass pro. He's on film.
Hey.
Stepping him inside.
Hi.
They know his head's gonna duck and he's spinning outside of his foot.
So I don't know. I mean, they're talking about
we're all going through
listening, and I don't.
pains in our career where
When did
so
you
long they start picking
to
on
listen
what
to?
you're not good at, right? It's very uncomfortable to get good at what you're not good at. It sucks. So they gotta get these young guys to come up and you're just like, okay, man, like your offensive line plan, the foundation of your house doesn't look like it's very good right now. Right, that can worry people, right? If your offensive line is a problem, it's hard to get anything going if your quarterback is getting hit. But I think Darnell Wright and Braxton Jones played decently last
I
week.
was so confused, Diane. I was hearing your television in the background, and I thought it was somebody talking about the subject. And finally, I realized it was talking about football.
Now, inside,
It took me a minute.
Coleman Shelton playing, whoever's at right guard, whether it be Bates or Pryor or Nate Davis, we got to get those positions going a little more because look,
Diane, can you hear me?
playing the NFL right now, they're already on roster.
Hi, Joyce. I can hear you.
How you doing?
I'm doing fine, but I can't participate. I can only watch.
That's okay. The fact that you are here is a wonderful thing. That is a good thing.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here. I can't drive. I haven't got my license yet.
Well, when do you go get it though?
Tomorrow, I'm going to get my license, hopefully.
Okay, that works.
Thank you.
We should have really come out and pondered these guys. They're a bunch of what? Yeah, that's a whole nother story.
Are these people talking about what they're concerned about?
Well, they're talking about, and they muted their mic, so we can't hear them, but they're talking about a time when you felt listened to.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. What do you remember a time when you felt listened to?
Yes, when my kids are around and I tell them what I think I should do or what I think.
Well, there you go. That's awesome. Okay, I think he's coming back, so I'm gonna.
Here they
Oh
come.
no, I'm wrong. I guess he said he had 3 more minutes. I can't hear him, but yeah, he keeps watching his watch. So.
Here comes Hester.
Yeah. She's double checking the questions that they're supposed to be talking about.
From the minute we arrived, they treated us like family. From the valet to the dealers to the hotel and restaurant staff, everybody was just incredible.
Oh, this is so nice looking at all the pairings. You know, I love looking at like Jan Miller and Josh talking. It's just so sweet. It's so cool. That's really neat.
And then
really neat.
Debbie and
Monitor your energy usage. Report it.
Yeah.
And more right from your phone.
It's just so cool.
Really, it's wonderful. Like, look at those people.
Yeah, we really do.
Download now at ComEd.com/app.
Are we getting anything accomplished though?
Well, we'll find out in a minute when they come back and tell us about it.
Okay, that's good.
They make and install all their own custom products. I just had my windows done and they are fantastic. Check out his reviews at ChicagoWindowGuys.com. The highest quality custom windows.
There we go.
Parts and labor. The best prices, best service. Call the Chicago Window Guys today at 847-881-3060 and get a free quote direct from the owners. Chicago Window
No, they're still talking. Okay. For a minute there, I thought they were done, but no, they're still talking. Now, next Sunday, they're gonna do you have to have your license by next Sunday, because next Sunday, they're gonna do the breakfast at church. So
Oh,
you want to be there for that. We're not having adult formation, but they're gonna do the breakfast.
well, that's nice. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I wanted to say.
I guess we can't come back. I started it and now we can't.
So what about?
All right, I'm gonna put you on serious guys.
Okay, friends, let's come back here.
Seriously?
Get back. I know, it goes fast. So let me just, yeah. Well, you actually can. But not with us. We only have a very short time. This isn't even an hour, so we just kind of rush through. And we do want to get to some exercise. So skillfully listened to, what kind of things jumped out? What did you notice?
Eye contact.
Uh-huh, interesting. Eye contact. What else?
Typically only clarifying questions.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's good. Others?
If the interruption is like concurrent with what I'm saying,
Yeah.
or somebody either like laughs and goes yes, or
Oh, some
Says-
kind of affirmation of what
Yeah.
you're saying, yeah.
yeah, or like finishes my sentence in a
Right,
way that
right.
does match.
Right,
Yeah.
so you can tell they're tracking, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
it's an appropriate response.
Appropriate, yeah, that's a great word, yeah.
Body language.
Oh, yeah, body language, absolutely.
Oh, true.
Distractedly looking at their phone doesn't quite cut it.
I'll second that.
Yeah, well, that kind of rolls into the second thing, what gets in the way?
People looking at their phone.
They're looking at their phone, right?
Listening to others.
Listening to others, yeah, at the table, you're listening to this conversation.
Well,
TV,
what really strikes me, I attended seminars
yeah,
years ago in addiction.
uh-huh,
And I found that the people who were leading the seminars were much more interested in telling their own stories of recovery than listening at all.
uh-huh,
It
yeah,
was very, very unsatisfying.
right, right, right,
Interesting, that's right, yeah.
yeah. So didn't really seem to
Didn't work
tune
at
into
all.
you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Not just me, but anyone else.
Anybody else?
Yeah.
Oh, no, didn't mind it.
Yeah, I was okay, I thought.
He didn't know. Yeah, other things that got in the way,
Not maintaining eye contact.
yeah, kind of distractedly looking around, yeah.
Being somehow triggered with my own stuff, something I would like
Ah.
to say that I maybe wasn't aware of until the other person brought it up. And then it was harder to listen because I was.
So now you're
caught in my own
jumping to
stuff.
four, this is what gets in the way for you, things, yeah.
Well, I find that with some people, well, my husband particularly.
We're gonna get personal.
But,
You don't even know what she's gonna say, and you got to get that.
It all happens all of it. I find that when I don't let him know that I wanted to talk to him, that is, I just say whatever, you just say whatever on your mind whenever you feel like it, no matter what the other person is doing. That causes
Didn't go
a
well.
lot of
Yeah.
not listening.
So he's kind of in his own bubble and you gotta break through that to kind of.
Can we make an appointment?
Make it fun, yeah. We're going to talk at level.
Suggested I blow a whistle.
Wow.
We really like that after a while.
Yeah, that could be overused. When you listen well. You should. lots of ways to get attention. When you listen well, how do you get in the right frame of mind? How do you do it?
Focus on the person and being in the moment.
Being in the moment, okay.
Focus.
I think you have to make a decision.
The decision, yeah.
You have to think, okay, this is what I'm gonna
I'm
do.
pushing everything else out. This is it. This is the whole game right here.
That lines up with, we talked about, what did we talked about isolating, and even in a full room, finding a corner or someplace to isolate to eliminate distractions. And that communicates some of the same thing, like,
Right.
I want to talk to you, we're moving over here.
Right.
Non-verbally, you're saying,
Right.
do I mean here?
Right.
I used to hear a comment from a pastor who said, be where your feet are, be here.
Yeah.
Don't be thinking about what you're gonna do next or
Yeah,
what you just
and
did.
that's
Be where-
surprisingly harder than it seems,
is
right?
hard.
I mean,
Yes.
I think we have to discipline ourselves in
Right.
do that, you know?
Yeah,
When you asked the question, I felt myself taking a really deep breath. And I think that that's part of it, is that pause of
Right.
Oh,
being,
yeah, you're right, yeah.
like breathing and making the eye contact and making a connection that way.
right. We have a lot of noise in our head that has to go somewhere in order to pay attention to what's out of my head. Right? We gotta quiet that somehow. You know, which isn't always easy to do.
Paying attention to the context.
Yeah,
So. Whether it's in a big group and you're trying to talk in the group, or you're trying to have the side that's outside, you know, are you at a party, are you at home?
right.
Am I yelling at Aubrey in the other room? She's like, what?
Yeah,
So context is.
yeah, yeah, yeah. The last one here, the fourth question. What gets in the way when you look into yourself? What is it that gets in the way? What trips us up?
Me,
I'm sorry?
self.
So, yeah, the self.
And having an agenda.
An agenda.
Oh,
Yes.
boy, that's right. Do I have time to listen to that?
Yeah,
Again.
sometimes that is hard. Yeah,
Preconceptions, going into a conversation with your own preconceptions of what the what the other person is going to say.
yeah, yeah.
Jumping to your response before they're done asking their question.
Okay. Yeah. Jumping is kind of related, right? It's like, I think I know where you're going and I'm getting ahead of it here.
I know where you're going.
I know where you're going. That's even more problematic. Yeah.
Well, the other thing that you said is when the answer doesn't match the question for number two.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Because the answer is usually in the head before the question is answered.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Well, I'm so old, I have too much to say.
Well,
I know something about everything.
that's right. And everybody ought to listen. Yeah.
Been there, done that.
Well, I forget what I'm gonna say.
Yeah.
You know, we have the most practice probably with our spouses,
Yes.
but
Should.
the thought occurs to me also with the children.
Hmm.
We have a different kind of listening and we're not always good at it because we do have an agenda and we want to get a point across.
Right.
And maybe listening to what the child has to say
Hmm.
will get the conversation moving in a more positive, because they can't wait. Whatever their experiencing has to explode.
Right. And of course, they start out without opinions as infants, but they accumulate them rather rapidly.
Yeah.
Indeed.
And then, and they're irrational in the beginning sometimes. They're just
And you
basically,
can't talk to emotion.
no, they're pure emotion in the beginning. But then eventually they actually do make sense. And that's, we've got to adjust then to that capability, increased ability.
When I think you can communicate with emotion, but what gets in myself in the way of it is when I know either I'm frustrated walking into it, or I don't want to speak the mood that the other person has. So that's kind of like a non-interest, or, you know, I don't want to sit and listen to the kid because I want to say what I want. So,
Just listen to me.
right, when,
You'll
yeah,
be all right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, as
I'm thinking when it comes to children, we don't listen
Yeah.
as we should. We have, if they do something wrong or this or this or this or this, we have our own idea of what they should be saying or what the response should be. But we haven't gone deeply enough. And sometimes they stop talking and don't share because we've already made a judgment. And, you know, it's time to go to the principal, it's time to stay a little bit after school, this, that, or whatever.
Right.
I think we need to do a lot more listening.
So let me throw out two words as I was thinking about this fourth question. I thought of passion as getting in the way. My eagerness, my excitement about the topic, or my confidence about the topic, or my certainty that I'm right. I thought a lot about this. That gets in the way. Right? Because I don't really want to take into information because I know what you're doing. I've heard all of your arguments, and I'm ready to kind of let me tell you the conclusion, which is the right conclusion. Because I've thought it all through. Most marriages, most political conversations, every kind of conversation, even at work, right? I've been here a long time. I know what's going on. I have something. So it's my passion that actually gets in the way. And yet that's I don't want to shelve that. I don't want to kill that, but I do have to rein it in order to create space for another person. So that's one word. The other word that came up for me was insecurity. The less confident I am about the topic, the more I want to convince them that I'm right. Now that's a really weird kind of paradox, right? Because on the one hand, I'm very confident and that's what gets in the way. And the other hand, I'm not so confident and that gets in the way. I want to convince you. Creating a space for listening means setting aside my own either overconfidence or insecurity, underconfidence that I want to convince you or convince myself even sometimes. Those are a couple of words that came up for me as I was thinking about this. Yeah.
What comes to mind is I've repeated this statement that this wise man told me. He said, don't confuse me with the facts.
Right.
I made up my mind. Right? And that's really where our country is right now.
That's where it is.
It is.
It's really hard.
It is. It's very hard to have dialogue across ideologies. Yeah. Again, that passion issue.
I
What-
read in Richard Rohr this morning
Mhm.
how we might think we're a Christian country, but where politics comes first before we behave like Christians.
It seems.
Our own attitudes about the nation is more our way of dealing with things rather than God.
Well, I'm going to turn it over to Jamie, who's going to work with us on some exercises. But thank you all. I just want to summarize and say, you know a lot about listening. We know what we should do.
Yeah.
It's just the discipline of it is hard. And we often fail at that discipline. But we know, witness all of the responses here. It's just hard to do it. Jamie.
Thank you.
I'm David, by the way.
David, I'm Jamie. Yes.
Yeah.
You don't know us. So, and ask you all to take one of these and pass them around. Great. Talk to you for just a few minutes. I'm gonna try and keep the lecture portion to a minimum, but I'm gonna at least cover what we're gonna be doing before we start doing it. All right, so we subtitled the session for today, The Winning Art of Listening. Why do we call it that? Because a lot of times when we're trying to listen to somebody, when we're trying to have a conversation with somebody, our goal, our objective is to try and make a difference, to change their mind or to come to some understanding by which we can all function together, right? And the problem is, a lot of times we look at the way of winning as by speaking. We listen, our best option is to try and communicate our position, try and override whatever their position is, to give them the facts to confuse them in order to try and make them have the same outcome or have the same belief set that we have. And that doesn't really work, right? So what we're trying to do is look at what do we do to actually move that person? What do we do if we actually want to convince somebody of a point that they're not already considering? And you can't do it by speaking. Your power comes from listening, which is oxymoron.
Wow.
We want to get our point across. We want to say what our opinion is. They're not going to hear it. And we can't make them listen. You have no power to make somebody else listen to you. You can talk louder, you can talk faster, you can talk more certainly, you can bring up the charts and the graphs and the numbers. It's not gonna make them listen. So how do you get someone to listen to you? You listen to them first. When you take that power and say, I'm going to listen to you, and you do a good job of it, you do those things that they feel skillfully listened to. That's gonna bring down their stress. It's going to bring down their anxiety. It's going to make them feel appreciated, make them feel seen, make them feel heard, and usually make them feel a little bit more kindly disposed towards you, right? They're more likely to want to reciprocate. If I spend an hour listening to somebody and then I come back and say, you know, this has been a good conversation, but this thing's really been eating at me. Do you mind if I share? They're probably going to be like, oh yeah, please. You feel that sense of social connection. I don't want to say obligation, it's not necessarily the case, but you do feel that tendency to try and treat somebody else the way they treat you. Golden rule, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we want them to listen to us. What do we got to do? We got to listen. And then they'll listen to us. So I have a couple of acronyms here for our activity. Speak and listen. Obviously, listen is going to be the key point today, but I'm going to go over both of them so we understand when it is our turn to speak. If they turn around and they decide to give us that floor, how do we do it respectfully? How do we do it properly? How do we do it in a way that they're not going to shut down and disengage? So I'll start with the speaker because that's where our brains go, but it's also the less important one today. So we can focus on the listen, which is what we want to tap into. Speaking, we're going to speak from the first person perspective, use I or we statements. Why do we want to do that? Anybody?
Ownership.
Ownership, good. Use statements are attacking statements. You never take out the trash. You always wear black. What's up with that? Anytime I say you statement, you get that sense of you.
What if it's true?
It could very well be true, but you still feel, maybe you don't feel attacked. Maybe
I
you
don't
like
always wear black.
You like black.
Thanks.
So you want to use I statements because that's more disarming. People can't question I feel, I think. No, you don't. Well, yes, actually, I do. I do feel that. You might think I shouldn't feel that way. You might think I don't deserve to feel that way, but you can't argue that I don't feel that. So if I use an I statement, I'm in a position where you can't contradict me and say, well, no, you don't. Yes, I do. Now, if I say you, I can be completely wrong and you can come right at me and say, that's not right at all. I'm like, oh, well, now I don't have any proof. Yeah. I statements, I'm on solid ground.
But what if they don't listen to the I statement?
Yeah, if they don't listen to the I statement, again, we're gonna go back and they're probably not in a listening mode at this point. And maybe we need to listen to them a little bit longer and say, okay, well, how do you see things? Turn it around and give them a chance to speak. And yeah, you're gonna have people who are gonna always take and take and take and take and take. That's true. There can be the black hole of emptiness who someone you can listen to for 17 hours and they will never let you get a word in edgewise. That's reality, right? There are people like that.
That's when you don't answer the phone.
That's when you don't answer. These are the people you find a comfortable space from. Yeah, we know how to do this. But the majority of people actually legitimately do want to connect with people and have some modicum of social skills. Most of us do. Not everyone does. That's fair. But we know when somebody is one of those people who's never going to listen, right? And even then, it's good to try anyway. You never know. You might be surprised. This might be the 37th time, and all of a sudden, something changed because something else happened in their life that has nothing to do with us, and they're in a different place. So never give up hope, but be reasonable with your own time. Pin down one objective you want to focus on. If you're speaking, don't go across the whole board. You know, what are we talking about today? Let's focus on this one thing. You can fix one agenda item. 17 agenda items is overwhelming. This is particularly relevant when we're talking about spousal conversations. I know a lot of us just said we get a lot of practice with our spouses. If you're having a conversation and the temperature starts ratcheting up, the first thing you start doing is bringing in everything else and then throwing the kitchen sink in, and all of a sudden you're no longer talking about the sock on the floor. You're talking about why we never went to Amber's birthday party 17 years ago and you didn't notice. You know, right? It all comes back. So pick one thing, fix one thing. Then you got time and you're still have energy and you're still interested, go ahead and go on to the next one. But don't hit it all up the front. Explore and be curious about the why of the problem for somebody else. Even if I'm talking, I want to understand, where do I think you're coming at from this? What do I think you're getting from me? I want to be engaged with how you are perceiving this as a listener. Acknowledge your part. If this is a conversation where you have any kind of disagreement, understand that it takes two to tango, right? It's not just this person is doing something that's silly and you need to correct them. Probably something in my behavior is causing some feedback, right? Something I've said, something I've done, something in my attitude can be making it more difficult for them to listen. So recognize that, maybe I'm talking too fast, maybe I'm talking too loud, maybe I'm not giving you enough space. Just own a little bit of, this is a give and take. This is not a me, and you need to listen.
I have a question. Are you allowed to say at that point, I'm sorry, but the last time we were arguing, whatever, I realized I said this and I want to apologize. Does that cause a problem, or is that,
No,
it's okay?
I think that would be okay. Yeah,
Okay.
I think everybody likes to have acknowledgement. And, people I can think of in my life who never, ever apologize or take ownership for anything. If they all of a sudden came up to me and said, you know what, I really was a jerk last week, I'm sorry. I'd be like, really? Not crazy, right? Yeah, so yeah, absolutely. If you recognize that you did something, you didn't own it before, by all means, own it. That's
You
never
get
gonna
to
go.
say, oh, yes, you were.
And
Probably not the best.
depends on the relationship. I'll cage that one.
Okay.
The last one, know what you want to see different. So again, especially if you're planning a conversation in advance, know what your objective is. If this is kind of coming up spontaneously, at least try and think in my head, where do I want this to go? How do I want this to end? How am I going to land this? And where am I going to pass it on? Now, listening, here's our key power. Lean in and take in what the other person is saying. Again, that's that eye contact piece. Yeah.
I want to say one thing before we go on to listening. Something that I have learned to do is, when I'm a speaker, is to recognize, and I suppose that's, I have to listen to them to find out, but many times you can see how, with the emotional state of a person, just by looking at them, seeing how they present themselves, their eyes, and that's really important. You can't expect them to want to listen if they're angry or if they're crying, or if they're so scattered by everything that they have to do. So I think that's really an important part of our job as speakers.
Yeah. And I think you raise a good point too. And we're talking about that listening and that reciprocation that we're trying to get. If someone is highly activated, that's probably a good sign that it's time for you to be in the listening role, not in the speaking. Because listening is what brings people down. Speaking done and poorly ratchets it up. And if they're already keyed up, you're less likely to do it well, and they're less likely to be able to listen to you anyway. Right. So yeah. And one more point too, they take a breath thing. That is huge. There's research that's been done on people just making impulsive decisions. I think this is in the context of like posting stuff online that you really wish you hadn't posted. Research found 5 seconds, that 2 deep breaths before you react to something. 95% of the stuff you wish you wouldn't have done, you don't do. And it doesn't matter if it's 5 seconds, 10 seconds, 15 seconds, they spread it out to over 2 minutes. 5 seconds is enough. You just take that breath, take those 2 breaths, let your brain get out of the immediate, and you make a smarter choice. So same thing here, when you're going to listen, you're going to listen to somebody, especially if somebody's coming at you activated and already keyed up and they're espousing a position you don't agree with. Okay, here we go. Set yourself up for success. Lean in and take what they're saying, look at them, eye contact, trying to make sure that they know that we're having a conversation right now. I'm paying attention to you. Like you said, proxemics, if you can get them to a corner of the room, great. If you can't, just be really face on eye contact. I'm listening. Identify the core feeling. What are they bringing up in? How am I reacting? Am I feeling nervous? Am I feeling scared? Am I feeling happy? Am I feeling angry? How am I reacting to this? Because the way I'm feeling is going to color my ability to listen and my ability to understand their point. Say 1 or 2 words to reflect the gist of what's being said. I talked about this before. So oh, and then, so you're saying it's like this thing. You don't want to take over the conversation, but reflect back a little bit. That if I finish the sentence with the right thing, or if I ask the question that follows directly on, it shows that you're engaged. It shows that you're tracking. That's good. Track what you don't understand. See, I'm jumping ahead here. If you don't follow something, ask the question. You said just now that you were really angry when this guy cut you off, but weren't you already speeding? I don't understand why. Is there another piece there? Entertain what is being presented, even if you don't agree. This person's probably not completely crazy. We're all crazy, not completely crazy. There's probably some basis on which they have this opinion that they're expressing to you, and they probably, either they're really confident about it, or maybe they're not so confident about it, they're trying to convince you. But entertain, is this something that could realistically be true? And in what context might you believe it to be true, even if you're pretty sure it's not? And then negotiate, navigate your way to comfort. Be prepared to try and find common ground. Yes.
When hearing all this, the one other thing that I think of is a thing not to do, which is, oh yeah, that happened to me, and then blah 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 blah,
Don't pivot,
and now we're all on me instead of your story and really listening to your story.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a good one. So
Does that actually happen to you?
that sounds like real experience.
No, it's, I do.
So anyway, in just a few minutes, I'm going to give you guys a chance to practice. If you want to break up into your small groups or partnership again, what I would encourage you to do, as comfortable as you feel, and obviously we want this to be a safe space, but we don't want anyone to stretch themselves too far. But pick something to talk about that's maybe a little edgy, a little controversial, something you're a little bit uncertain of, and see if someone can actually receive that. And if you're a listener, try to actually hear what this person is saying, even if it seems a little bit out there, or yeah, I didn't know that. Try and really focus in on what they're saying, what your reactions are. Try and follow these steps. And I hope we have time for everyone to do both roles, but we're going to be a little tight on time. So 2 minutes, break up into your pairs. I'll go get the volume, and I'll be coming around back and answering questions.
Yeah.
So, hi, Mark. How you doing? I appreciate you joining early. I love your icon there. I know I assume it's, I don't know, it's saying somebody, but it's awesome.
Kudos.